Yo, what's going on, people? It's your boy, the Boxing Lowdown here, and welcome to episode number 36 of the Boxing Lowdown podcast. And as always, guys, I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host, my father, Mr. Controversial, Laurie from AFTV. What's going on, man? Laurie, you there?
In the building, man. In the building. What's going on?
Not much, man.
Yeah,
Bit of a lag. Bit of a lag there.
Hear me? Is there a bit of a lag? Oh.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you see me? We all good, yeah?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, man. We're gonna go ahead. We're gonna go with it, man. We're gonna roll with it today. Listen, a lot to talk about. We've only got an hour today, so we'll squeeze it in. I wanted to get your thoughts first of all on the Wilder and Fury press conference that took place this week. Obviously, the first time that these two have seen each other in since they fought, which was in February 2020. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that press conference, your reaction to it. And as I'm here, man, first of all, let me just pick up everybody that comes into the chat. Shout out to my guy Harvey every single time, showing love. Big up, bro. Anybody that comes in the chat, you know what to do, man. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're live. Leave your comments in, and we'll happily answer them. Laurie, give me your thoughts on the press conference then between Fury and Wilder.
Well, it was interesting, wasn't it? I mean, Wilder decided he was going to plead the fifth and not say nothing. It was an interesting kind of meeting of minds, really, wasn't it? Because obviously there's a lot riding on this fight for both fighters. And previously Wilder had said a whole lot. A lot of people said he was making excuses. He hadn't taken the defeat in the right manner. Lo and behold, he's got the rematch via arbitration. So everyone was looking forward to this showdown, thinking that, yeah, man, fireworks are going to fly, shots are going to get fired. But instead of that, it was kind of low-key, really, wasn't it? Although it was low-key, it was still quite interesting to see the mindset of the two fighters. Wilder decided he wasn't going to say anything. He left the talking to his trainer and basically just issued a very simple statement, thanking people for standing behind him, thanking his team, and then saying that there was going to be bloodshed on the night. So he was coming in cold, I guess. But a lot of people were suggesting that Fury won the mind games, but I'm not so sure, really. I'm not so sure about all that, to be honest. At the end of the day, man, this is just a precursor to the main event. So to make a direct assessment and say, yeah, I thought Fury won that, even if he did, what does it really mean, really? Nothing. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, man, the two are going to square off, barring any last-minute hiccups, on July the 24th. And when they get in there, we'll see what's what. You know what I mean? I mean, in a way, I can see why Wilder said nothing, because had he have made any remarks about what he felt happened at the second fight in terms of the excuses he was coming out with, then that would have probably become the story of the whole press conference. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to focus on that either. He's just looking forward. So I can see why he's taken that stance, to be honest. Say as little as possible, left it to his trainer, who, let's face it, Malik Scott is a very articulate guy, and he was able to manage the questions being fired at him. So I think that's quite a smart strategy by Wilder, to be honest, if I'm being honest.
What do you think about the face-off at the end? You know, it was the longest face-off I've ever seen. They were staring at each other for like 5 minutes. And when it gets to that stage, do you not think Fury won that? Do you think that Wilder broke when he turned away and walked off? Or do you think it was just literally, you know, just nothing to really look into?
Yeah, again, I've heard people say, yeah, Wilder turned away first. I've heard people say that Fury changed his mannerism in the stare-off, so that meant that Wilder won. Listen, at the end of the day, man, they're two top-class athletes. And what happens in a stare-down is not in any way going to affect what happens on the night. I think that this is just for show. It's the precursor to the main event. And it's just build-up stuff, really. It's stuff that's designed to get the likes of me and you talking and the fans talking. But in reality, it means very little, if anything.
my opinion of it is both of these two are very experienced. You know what I mean? World Championship, elite level heavyweights. It's all just part of the show. Do you know what I mean?
It is.
You can take what you want from it. Fury was just his normal self. I didn't see anything different in Fury that I haven't seen in previous press conferences. He was, you know, just cracking jokes, doing his thing, coming there with no top on and that sort of thing. Fury was just being Fury. Do you know what I mean? Wilder, on the other hand, yeah, I mean, I don't know what message he was trying to send out, not talking, but listen, if that's what he wants to do, then it is what it is. I mean, maybe he feels like he said everything he needs to say. I think he was only doing media with a certain section of, you know, the American boxing media. And it is what it is, man. I mean, I don't think Wilder is in any way intimidated. I don't think Fury is intimidated, because if Wilder was, then Wilder wouldn't have been pushing for this third fight so much. And Fury clearly isn't. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it was a bit, you know, like there was a lot of hype going into this press conference because they hadn't seen each other for so long. All the stuff that's been happening since that fight, you know, with all the claims and, you know, the bad words and the bad feeling between the two. But really, it was just another press conference to me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, man, at the end of the day, this is Tyson Fury's all about these types of things, isn't it? This is a man who's rolled into press conferences before wearing a Batman outfit and stuff like that. So it's very hard to so-called get the better of Tyson Fury in environments like this anyway. Because Tyson Fury is going to revel in this type of thing. You know what I mean? This is what he loves to do. This is a big part of it for him. So if you're Deontay Wilder, he said what he said previously. He's obviously trying to present himself as the silent assassin. So he's probably better off not saying very much. Now, I'm sure Bob Arum, even though he hasn't said so publicly, he'll probably be a bit disappointed the fact that the impression will be that Wilder's not doing enough to sell the fight. But then many would argue again that this fight is already sold. Apparently the tickets are flying out the window for this fight. The interest is there. The intrigue is there. You know what I mean? This is about vengeance for Wilder. And for Fury, this is about shutting up this guy for good, once and for all. So there is that dynamic there that works. I mean, this is a very saleable fight. In fact, I'm actually quite looking forward to this fight now, which is something, if you said this to me months ago, I probably would have said, no, I don't want to see this fight again, man. We've seen what we're going to see already. But it's that intrigue there, the fact that Fury beat him so comprehensively last time. Then there was the stuff that came out of that second fight. Call it what you will. Some people say that it's ludicrous. He's making excuses. But you've only got to look at some of the videos that have appeared online. Wilder genuinely does believe this stuff. You can call him delusional all you want. But this guy feels he was being wronged. And he wants vengeance. And the one thing you can say about Wilder is that, okay, boxing-wise, it's very unlikely that he's going to beat Fury over 12 rounds. But the one thing you can't deny about Wilder is he's got the biggest KO percentage record in the history of heavyweight boxing. Is that the guy can punch. And like I said before on your show, it's not like he's not done it before, has he? He's decked Fury twice, arguably knocked him out, and just didn't get the referee's call. So while he's still standing, he represents a threat in that fight on the July the 24th. As long as he's upright and in there pitching, he has a legitimate chance of landing that one shot or that combination that can get Fury out of there. So he's dangerous.
Let's go to some of the comments here. Conrad Boxing in the chat, as always. What's going on? He's put, I think this is personal for Wilder, to be honest, not just for show. Ian Hamilton has said here, evening guys, as always. Fury buzzes off the back and forth, calling it now. Wilder is going to charge at him. Harvey has said here, this isn't Wilder being scared. This is him taking it extremely serious. Conrad has said here, I agree. And with Malik Scott, he has the right person at his side. I was impressed with Malik Scott, actually. I thought he was very articulate, like you said, in answering those questions there. I thought he was good. Last comment here from Scott. He's put great heavyweight undercard before the main event. Yeah, it's good. It's an all undercard. I think it's all heavyweights on the undercard, isn't it? You've got Hellenius and Kaunaki fighting again.
That's what I mean.
Who else have we got on there? There's F.A. Jaguars on there. There's the other American heavyweight that's really looking really good as well. The undercard's looking pretty good.
Yeah, man. I mean, there are potentially some very good fights on the undercard. And I do agree with what most of your contributors said there. I mean, Wilder, by him taking that silent approach, I think it kind of works because although he talks a lot and he can be quite entertaining, he's not perhaps the greatest talker. So if he leaves that to Malik Scott, who, like you said, is a very articulate man, who's been around the boxing game several years himself, so he knows these types of press conferences inside out. So if you're Wilder, you leave the talking to Malik Scott, you present yourself as this silent, cold assassin. It kind of works. It really does. The dynamic works. And then, of course, you've got Fury. He'll talk forever. So it kind of works to me, you know what I mean? Like I said, Bob Arum might have the view that, hey, man, you're not doing enough to promote the fight. But then, like I said, man, the fight is sold on what's happened previously. And I think people are genuinely looking forward to it because, like I said before, if you're Wilder, with the punch that he's got a legitimate chance for the upset. And it would be an upset.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Listen, we're only going to be here for an hour, so I want to move on quickly to other topics because we've got a lot to talk about to squeeze in within that hour. So let's talk about last weekend. You know, we had 2 shows. One of them was over here, Matchroom with Lewis Ritson, and there was also a show with Shakur Stevenson and Jeremiah Nakatia. Now, Lewis Ritson lost to Jeremiah Ponce in the 10th round in Newcastle. I'm not sure if you watched it live or not, but it was, you know, for me, it was a one-sided fight. I mean, Ponce hurt Ritson very early on with a body shot. And to me, it looked like that Ritson was trying to trade with him. You know, both of them just fighting how they knew to, but Ponce was just better. And there was a controversial moment in the fight where towards the end of it, in the 10th round, I believe, 10th round, the corner threw the towel in, and then the referee saw the towel and he threw the towel back out, and the fight wasn't stopped not long after that. But the referee received some criticism there from Matthew Macklin, who was commentating on the fight, and you know, there was a talking point afterwards. But this sort of thing is not unusual. I mean, it has happened before. You only have to look at Mickey Vann when Graham Earl fought Katsidas, and you know, the corner threw the towel in there and he threw it back out in America as well. I'm sure there's been quite a few instances where the referee, Mills Lane and others, have thrown the towel back out the ring. So what was your thoughts on that fight and the controversial moment?
Well, first up, Ritson being stopped came as no real surprise to me. I think we're seeing a fighter that's on the decline. We're seeing a fighter that initially, when he was on the come up, he was making his way through. He was the bigger, stronger man, and he was basically walking opponents down, and his strength and size was doing the job for him. A bit like a weight bully, to be honest. But I always, without being too critical of Ritson, I always doubted his skill set. He tended to win fights based on physicality rather than skill. And let's be honest, especially as you go up through the levels and through the weights, that's only going to take you so far. It's a similar type of thing to what we've seen with Jarrett Hurd. Earlier in Jarrett Hurd's career, he was walking man down. He was taking a lot of punishment. Just his sheer physicality, his size, his strength, he had a good chin. And he was basically able to absorb shots, keep coming forward and get the win. And I think it's a similar type of thing with Lewis Ritson. Now Lewis Ritson is fighting guys at a higher level. They're bigger, they're stronger. He's gone through the weight. He's been found out a bit. So yeah, I think we're seeing a fighter that's on the decline, and he's going to need to be managed very carefully from here on in. In terms of the stoppage, I can see it from both sides of view because the rules are is that only the referee can stop the fight. So if the corner does throw the towel in, the referee's not obliged to just accept that as a stoppage defeat. It's his decision. So maybe he felt that he was being undermined. That being said, if the corner can see clearly that the man's had enough, and let's face it, in Ritson's corner, he has his dad there, and he's obviously going to have his son's interests at heart. If the towel does come in, to me, the referee should just say, right, stopping the fight.
Yeah, I mean, he had no chance of winning.
Yeah,
Lewis Ritson at that point. So I don't know why the referee allowed it to carry on, to be honest. Normally,
I think that the referee probably thought he was being undermined, and the rules do state only the referee can stop the fight. So I think it's a combination of those two things. But one thing I would say about referees, and I've noticed this in a few fights recently, is that referees are there to protect the fighters and obviously, you know, apply the rules, as it were, in boxing. But far too often in boxing nowadays, if you watch the fights, it's almost like the referees are trying to become part of the story. I watched a lot of fights recently where referees are constantly getting in the action, issuing instructions to the fighters that you think, come on, man. I mean, there was an incident in the Shakur-Stevenson fight that we'll talk about a bit later, but the referee kept telling off the fighters for stepping on each other's toes. Now, if you get anybody that knows anything about boxing knows that when a southpaw guy is fighting an orthodox guy, their feet will become entangled. It's just the natural progression of two fighters of a different stance, leading with a different foot. You know what I mean? And they're engaging in battle. Quite often, the feet are going to get tangled up. He was like warning the fighters, interrupting the action to say, stop stepping on each other's foot. I just found that was ridiculous. I've seen that in the Josh Taylor fight where the referee kept getting in the way. That was another example of referees far too often nowadays looking to become part of the story instead of just a good referee will stay out the action and will only get involved when it's absolutely necessary. And I think that far too often these days, referees are looking to become part of the action, and that can't be the case. That can't be good for boxing.
Starting to get an ego, some of these referees. Harvey agrees. He's put here, I agree with Laurie. Referees need to only come in when it's necessary. Yeah.
They only need to come in if there's a clear rules are being flagrantly broken, or if you know there's an obvious need for them to come in, like, you know, a fighter clearly hurt and in no position to continue, then yeah, fair enough and stuff like that. But when you constantly see referees nitpicking, issuing instructions that you think, oh, come on, just let them fight, will you? You know what I mean? We've not come here to see the referee. We've come here to see the two fighters fight. Let them fight, man. You know what I mean? It's so annoying when you're watching a referee. A good referee will obtain a peripheral position and allow the fighters to engage unless there's absolutely a reason for him to get involved.
Do you know
Far too many days we're not seeing that.
Do you know one of the worst refereeing performances I've ever seen? One of the worst I've seen was pretty recent, actually. My boy K Prosper, and I'm not being biased when I talk about this, when he fought Sandor Martin in Spain, that referee in that fight was one of the worst referees I've ever seen. Now, listen, K Prosper was losing the fight anyway. The right winner was called on points, obviously. But that referee was absolutely terrible, man. I mean, it's dreadful. And I've always said this, like, I don't mind having referees interviewed after fights. I put it out there probably about half a year ago now, where I said that I wouldn't mind seeing referees getting interviewed after the fights, but then that might legitimize your point even more about them, you know, trying to get involved in the fight. But I remember when Zab Judah fought Costa Tszyu, and Costa Tszyu knocked Zab Judah out in the second round. The referee stopped it. Zab thought it was premature. He threw the stool at the referee, and then there was a madness that happened. But after, they interviewed the ref just to get his perspective on things. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know what you think about that, but I wouldn't mind seeing that. Maybe we could have heard the actual referee's reasons as to why he threw the towel back out or whatnot. I don't know if he's explained it already, but I don't know what you think about that.
Well, my thoughts on referees is that if you get a good referee, you hardly notice him, yeah, because they will be there and they are the ones in there enforcing the rules when they have to, but they're also obliged to keep the action flowing. So, for example, one of the things I really dislike about referees is that when they don't let fighters fight inside. So typically what you might see happen is the two fighters come together. Now, there's a difference between excessive holding and guys fighting in the inside and fighting their way out of a clinch. Far too often nowadays, referees, as soon as the fighters engage in a clinch, break, and you're getting and you're pushing them away. 2 seconds later, they fall into another clinch, break. Now, to me, that disadvantages a guy that's a body puncher. A lot of fighters like to work inside. That's their game. They like to be up close, especially if the guy's shorter. He wants to stay at a close range and let his hands go. I remember when Ricky Hatton fought Floyd. And one of the chief complaints that Ricky Hatton had after, he said, listen, I'm not saying, and I'm being fair to Ricky now, he did make the point quite clear. He said, listen, I'm not saying it was the reason I lost, but the referee took away a lot of what I was bringing to the table because he would not allow me to work inside. Ricky Hatton was making the point, I'm a very good body puncher. Part of the game plan was to get in close and to try and whack Floyd to the body. And he said, every time I tried to go up front and personal and engage and hit Floyd to the body, the referee, who at that time was Richard Cortez, kept breaking the action. And he said he felt disadvantaged by that.
Yeah.
Joe Cortez, yeah. So, and I can see where Ricky might have a point there, but it happens so often where referees break up the action as soon as the fighters come together. They don't apply the rules in terms of knockdowns properly, where a fighter gets knocked down, they won't let the guy who's knocked the fighter down go to the opposite corner. You know what I mean? It's a real problem. Yeah. And even in fights where sometimes they allow what I call long counts. So we saw that in the Josh Taylor fight, didn't we? I mean, it was it was ridiculous what was going on there, man. It was so obvious that the referee was working against Josh Taylor in that fight. Now, he may have been, I don't want to come out and call the referee a cheat and he's corrupt and all that, but it was clear to me and others, you thought that, didn't you, that Josh Taylor was being disadvantaged in that fight.
Well, clearly.
So maybe there might be some kind of natural thing where the referee was just leaning towards what would have been the hometown fighter. And that happens a lot as well. So, you know, the refereeing situation in boxing, man, needs to be looked at, I think. And the referees need to be briefed properly and, I mean, given clear instructions before the fight on how to referee fights properly.
Ian Hamilton has said here, Steve Gray was shocking with the trust decision. The British board don't hold them to account. We need new refs. Have you noticed it's always the same ones? We need new ones ASAP. Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah, I think so. But quite often you get a lot of referees that are quite experienced and they're the ones that's making the mistakes. You know? And like I said, if you have a bad referee in a fight or a referee that's too over officious, it can affect the outcome and it can also spoil the enjoyment of the fight. You know?
Quick one before we move on. Where does Lewis Ritson go from here, man? With Jeremiah Ponce, he'll get a shot. Well, mate, he'll be in line, should I say, for a crack at the title soon enough. Lewis Ritson, where does he go? I mean, since he's moved up to 140, he hasn't looked very impressive at all. He looks like he's on the decline to me. I don't know where he goes from here, but what do you think?
Well, I think what we're seeing, as I said earlier, is a fighter that's clearly on the decline. When he was coming up through the weights at lightweight and stuff like that, he did look very good. But if you look at some of those wins he was getting, those were against guys that were pretty small at the weight. And he was basically weight bullying them, you know what I mean? And I always had my reservations about his skill set. And now he's moved up in weight and he's moved up in levels. I think he's been found out a bit. That's not to say that he's not been a good fighter in back when he was winning those fights. I just think that he's reached his ceiling and he's on the decline. And I think if he is going to continue in this sport, then he needs to be matched extremely carefully because I'm not seeing a big future in the game for him, I have to say at this stage. I really don't. So if he's going to stay in boxing, he's going to have to come down a level or so and he's going to have to be matched very carefully.
I agree, yeah. I can't see him elevating any other level now, but he has got a following in Newcastle. He can make for some very good nights there if he's matched correctly. I think that's what it's going to be now, pretty much with Ritson. Maybe just domestic level. For I can see it being.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Even at junior welterweight in this country, man, there's some good fighters. So you know what I mean. There's some good up and coming fighters in this weight class, junior welterweight. So you know, it's not looking great, man. Personally, if I was his dad, I'd probably be saying to him, look, son, because he has achieved a lot in boxing. He's given it his best. He's he's a hard-working fighter, gives his all. But you don't want to take it too far, man. There's a life after boxing. And I think he's got a family as well. So I think all those things need to be taken into consideration, and decisions need to be made accordingly.
Let's move on. There was another fight that took place that night over there in the States. Shakur Stevenson, one of the brightest young talents in boxing, in my opinion. He became the WBO mandatory challenger to Jamel Herring with a win over Jeremiah Nakatila. Now, although Shakur Stevenson is one of my favorite up-and-coming young fighters, that fight last weekend was, it wasn't the most entertaining, man. I am a purist. I do like watching skills on show. But yeah, it was pretty one-paced. And you know what? Shakur Stevenson was his own biggest critic. Do you know what I mean? He was the one that was criticizing his performance more than anyone else. But for me, wasn't particularly entertaining to watch. He got the win at the end of the day. He's put himself in a position to fight Jamel Herring now, even though he called out Oscar Valdez. But yeah, I guess you have those fights sometimes, man. You can't be entertaining in every fight.
You know what? I'm going to disagree with you slightly there, Daryl. I don't know what other sport that you can dominate from start to finish against a guy that was considered before the fight as a legitimate opponent. Because let's face it, there weren't too many people trashing Nakatila before the fight. He came in with a good record. He was apparently a noted puncher, tall, big for the weight, strong, ambitious. Didn't know a whole lot about him because obviously he fought on a different continent. So, there will be some doubts as to the level of opponents. But I think all things being equal, he was considered a decent test at this stage of Shakur Stevenson's career. Now, Shakur Stevenson's a young fighter. He's gone out there. He's won every single round, knocked the guy down at least once. And yet people are still criticizing him. I mean, yes, it wasn't the most exciting fight in the world, but listen, that's sport for you. When Roger Federer wins, it isn't always a rip-roaring, back and forth, entertaining performance, yeah? When Man City win, it's not always a great game. So you get my drift. So this thing about, it was boring, it wasn't entertaining enough, I can accept that to a certain degree, but I think it went overboard last week. Because I watched the fight, I watched all the rounds, and I was impressed with Shakur Stevenson. You know what I mean? I thought he won comfortably. It's another step in his career that he needed to overcome. He did that with aplomb. He hardly got hit by a guy that's a noted puncher. Yes. Could he have done a bit more and tried to get the guy out of there? Yes, that's possible. But then you got to remember he's in with a big puncher. I mean, listen, we saw what happened with Devin Haney the other day, didn't he? He won rounds 1 through till 9. Got caught in the 10th, and then after that, when he got hurt, a lot of people were talking about that one time he got hurt as if that was the story of the whole fight. When really, up until then, man, he was whitewashing his opponent. So, we got to be a little bit fair to the fighters, man. You know what I mean? I thought it was a very accomplished performance. He demonstrated a high skill level. He won every round. Yes, he didn't knock the guy out, but come on, man. He's not a knockout puncher. This is the thing with Shakur Stevenson.
Okay. This is one thing. What we said this about Devin Haney when he fought the Cuban, I forgot his name now. When he won every Gamboa, that's it, yeah. And I'll say the same with Shakur Stevenson. Okay, so first of all, would you watch that fight again? Would you watch it again?
No, but there's a lot of fights I wouldn't watch again. You know what I mean? Listen,
all right.
Even the best fighters in the world, Muhammad Ali, I can remember even as a kid watching some of his fights and people said that they weren't very entertaining. You know what I mean? Look at Tyson Fury. Some of his fights have been absolute snore fests. You know what I mean? But he won, and he won well, and he's unbeaten today. And he's the superstar of the game, whether we like to admit it or me. Like I said, I'm not his biggest fan outside the ring, but inside the ring, he's a superstar of the sport. He's not a very entertaining fighter to me, Tyson Fury, but he's good at what he does. He gets the job done. And with Shakur Stevenson, he's a young fighter making his way through the game. He's not, you see, Shakur Stevenson is blessed with many things, skills and reflexes and heart and, dexterity and stuff like that. A smart boxing brain. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't blessed with one punch power. So I think it's unfair and unreasonable to suggest that every time he goes in there, especially against guys who, let's face it, he's going to start fighting guys at a higher level. For him to just blow those guys away, you know what I mean? Like a prime-time Sugar Ray Leonard or Sugar Ray Robinson. Doesn't work like that.
Didn't we criticize Devin Haney for Gamboa? The same reason, winning every round but not taking him out.
I'll tell you where I do have a little bit of criticism for guys like Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson, and even then, it's with caution. So with Devin Haney in his fight against Gamboa, and again with Shakur Stevenson in his fight against Nakatila, prior to the fight, these guys, they're young, they're verbose, they're confident, and they want to come across a certain way. So they will go out on a limb and say, look, I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Because it's almost like that's what we expect them to do. So they talk themselves up and say, yeah, I'm going to go in there and this fight ain't going the distance, trust me. So then when the fight does go the distance, people are going to say, well, yeah, but you know what I mean? You should have knocked him out. So I guess if we're being fair, people can criticize him and say, well, look, you said that this guy, you're going to get him out of there before 12, and you didn't. But those of us who watch boxing on a regular basis know that that is what fighters do. They will say that, even when the chances of it happening is not always, you know what I mean, always going to happen like that. They will tell you, I'm going to go knock him out. But me personally, a person who's been watching boxing from since I was this high, I know better than to think that. Boxing doesn't work like that. You can't always just go for the knockout and think you're going to get it, especially when you go up in levels. And stars make fights. So am I pissed that he never got the guy out of there? No. What I was looking at was how he fought, his skill set, you know what I mean? How his reactions in the ring, you know what I mean? His game plan, how he managed the fight. Those things are more important to me than him getting a knockout. You know, so
let's go to the comments here. Francisco Alator has put here, Nakatila is awkward. Stevenson is a defensive counter puncher, and Nakatila's power made him more cautious. The styles led to an underwhelming fight, but I still appreciate the tactics and technique.
I think that's well said. I agree with much of what he says there. You know what I mean? Listen, had Shakur gone out there and that fight had been close and Nakatila had won a number of rounds, and, you know what I mean, people were saying after the fight, you know what, I thought Nakatila done enough to get a draw or even beat him or stuff like that. Or the fact that Stevenson dropped so many rounds shows me he's not the finished article just yet. Then that would, to me, that would be more concerning. But at the end of the day, the facts are the facts. Shakur Stevenson won every round. On all the judges, I think from one who may have gave Nakatila a share of the round, but he won pretty much every round. Certainly when I was watching it, I thought he won every round. So you can't ask for much more than that, really, can you? You could say, yeah, we'd have preferred him to get him out of there, but you're not always going to get everyone out of there, you know what I mean? Even if you are a big puncher, you're not always going to get everyone out of there, you know what I mean? So it is what it is, man.
Big up Istvan Grob here in the chat here. I saw your comment earlier before I logged into the video from the last podcast. So big up, man. Thank you for the comment again. He's put here, great stuff, gentlemen. Keep it coming. We certainly will, man. Thank you for joining us. Francisco Alator has put, a counter puncher needs a willing dance partner. Herring and Valdez will be more willing to mix it up with Stevenson, most likely to their detriment. Stevenson beats both of them. That was going to be my next question. So thank you, Francisco, for kind of segueing me in there. But after the fight, Stevenson, like I said, he's a mandatory challenger for Herring. He said he would prefer Valdez. Francisco here has said he thinks that Stevenson beats the both of them. What do you reckon? Do you think he can beat both of them?
I happen to agree. I think he beats both of them. I think that Herring is an older guy. I think Stevenson would probably beat him somewhat easier. Although I don't like to use the word easy in fights like this because they're both top-level guys. Valdez...
that's a good fight, man.
Yeah, I think that would be the more exciting fight. But I think that Shakur Stevenson's skill sets, man, is superior to both of those guys. So I would pick him to win. But boxing being boxing, you can never be totally sure. I would just like to say, though, Istvan Grob, was it his name?
Yeah.
I wonder if it's Hungarian because... Istvan is kind of similar to Istvan Kovacs. You might not remember him. He was a great amateur fighter, man, Hungarian guy. I remember watching him in the Olympics and stuff like that. Great fighter. And I think he's occupies a senior role at WBO now. Istvan Kovacs. Remember watching him, man. Very skilled fighter. He was kind of like Lomachenko before Lomachenko, if you like. I'd be interested to hear what Istvan Grob says about that. But yeah, so to go back to my original point, man, I think Shakur Stevenson, in my eyes, he would be favored to beat both Valdez and Herring. I think Valdez might give him the sterner test, but they would be both good fights for him at this stage of his career, obviously.
Ian says here, Stevenson really needs a standout win. Can we say what his best win is? Him versus Valdez would be perfect, both with the same promoter, just saying. Same with Jamel Herring, isn't it? He's under top rank as well, isn't he? Stevenson's best win. He's screaming out for a big fight, isn't he?
Yes,
screaming out for it.
Yes.
Valdez, for me,
none of these guys, man, they keep saying, oh, he can't punch and he's not exciting and all this lot, but I don't see too many people clamoring to fight him. I mean, I seem to remember Shakur Stevenson's calling out Carl Frampton as well, and Carl Frampton didn't seem to want that fight, so he seemed to target Jamel Herring. I wonder why that was, you know what I mean? And he got beat in that fight. So, and I know that Shakur Stevenson has made a big thing about calling out Jamel Herring, who, by the way, he's actually quite friendly with. So I think that kind of shows his level of hunger and ambition. The fact that he's calling out guys that hitherto he's been friendly with and had sparred with before. And he wants to smoke, man. And he's also called out Oscar Valdez on numerous occasions. And Oscar Valdez, for whatever reason, has not responded in kind. So maybe that's an indication of just how good Shakur Stevenson is. And let's face it, he's only going to get better. So if I was Herring and Oscar Valdez, I probably want to take that fight soon. Because Stevenson's very young, he's in his early 20s, and you can see by his body he's filling out a bit. He's not got his man strength yet, and with the man strength, he will get an extra measure of power. I'm not going to say just because he's stronger, it's going to turn him into a power puncher, but you know what I mean. He's going to be able to sit down more on his punches. You're going to gain more experience, and ultimately, he should become a better fighter. So if I was Valdez or Herring, especially Herring, who's probably coming towards the tail end of his career, no real disrespect to him there. If you're going to fight Shakur, now's the time to probably do it while he's still a little bit green.
I think that going back to Ian Hamilton's question about his best win, maybe Joet Gonzalez. You know, there was a lot going into that fight, a lot of history. There was a bit of a backstory there. Shakur Stevenson was, you know, I think he was dating his sister. And then, it was his sister who's also a fighter, isn't she, at the time. And Joet and the family, they weren't happy with that. And, you know, like they fought. So there was a lot on the line. There was a belt on the line. That was his best win for me because he looked very good in that fight as well. Joet Gonzalez, no pushover either. So,
again, a fight. He didn't get the stoppage in that fight. But again, it was a fight where he won literally every round against a guy, Joet Gonzalez, where people were predicting big things for him as well. So that was a very good win.
Yeah.
Two young guys expected to do well at that weight, and Shakur Stevenson dominated him, man. On a side note, I'm hearing that him and that girl that they were talking about are no longer together. So
yeah, he's with another girl now, man.
Yeah, but anyway, he won that, and I remember watching that fight again. He dominated from rounds 1 through 2. Listen, there's very few guys that are going to outbox Shakur Stevenson, man. Very few. I haven't seen anyone at that weight, to be honest. I think if you're going to beat him, you're going to have to try and bully him if that's possible and maybe knock him down. He appears to have a good chin as well. So he's going to be a hard task for anyone in that division. Is he the most entertaining and exciting? Maybe not. But, you know what I mean? I would back him to beat pretty much everyone in that division as of right now.
Our brother Shane Willoughby in the chat. What's going on, bro? He's put, what's happening, family? Good to see Shane here, as always, man. Go check him out. Go check out his Insta page, man. The guy keeps it real. I am Shane One. Go check it out, man. Boxing reporter, always comes in, shows love. And, you know, very good friend for both of us, man. He's put here, he would like to see Shakur against Chris Colbert.
Yeah, that would be a good fight. That would be a very good fight. Chris Colbert is doing good things as well. He's actually a little bit more exciting, if that's the word to use, to watch than Shakur. He gets his fair share of stoppages. He's quite aggressive, throws a lot of combinations. So that would be a great fight. But again, I would pick Shakur Stevenson in that fight, man. I know they've sparred together. I know they know each other from the amateurs. Obviously, Shakur Stevenson was the better amateur. He went to the Olympics, won a silver medal. And Shakur Stevenson, man, if you look at some of his amateur fights, he was imperious as an amateur. So yeah, man, the guy's skill set cannot be denied. Very skillful boxer.
Let's move on, man. We've got other stuff to talk about here. I want to quickly, before we move on, speak about Claressa Shields, who made her MMA debut last week. I know you weren't really too, you would have rather she kept with the boxing for now. Did you manage to catch any of that fight or the highlights or anything? Did you manage to get any of it?
I did. She got the stoppage win, third round, I think it was. Listen, man, I still stick to what I said last week, which is I would prefer her to stay in boxing and to achieve everything she can achieve. And then, if anything, make the transition to MMA. But you know what? Fair play to her, man. She's crossed over.
I don't think it's a bad thing, you know. I think
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
It's great PR. It's great PR. What she's doing, you know, good for her image as well, especially getting the win.
Yeah, I mean, now that she's got the win, yeah, great. I mean, dare I say it, if she hadn't got the win, it might not have looked so good. But you know what? She's daring to be great, so you have to respect her for that. And what she's doing at the moment, man, is unprecedented, isn't it? Really. So fair play to her, man. Like I said, I still would prefer to see her clean up the boxing scene, fight Savannah Marshall. But hey, you got to give it to her, man. I watched her fight. And she did well. I mean, she got taken down a few times.
She lost the first two rounds, I reckon.
Yeah. But one thing I liked about her in that fight, man, she maintained her composure. Even when she was taken down, she didn't panic. She didn't look out of her depth. She held her ground. She avoided the submissions, and she came back and got a very impressive stoppage win. And now they're talking. See, the problem she might have now is that with a win as good as that, they might escalate her up, the rankings a bit, and she might be forced to fight somebody who may be a bit too experienced for her. But hey, man, I guess while she's doing it, people are going to watch it, and it's going to be of genuine interest. And I wish her all the best. But like I said, I'm going to stick to my guns there. I would prefer her to fulfill her potential in the boxing ring first. But it looks like this is the route she's going to go down. So it is what it is, I guess.
Okay. Like I said, I thought that, she struggled a bit in the first two rounds. I mean, no surprise there. I mean, like the woman that she was fighting, Elkin, obviously she's been in the game for a lot longer. But some of the ground tactics. Listen, I'm not an MMA guy, as you could tell. But yeah, I think it took Claressa a while to adjust. But then when she did, man, she had her opponent on the floor. She was raining the punches in. And she got the stoppage win. So yeah, as long as it doesn't, take away from her boxing career, and we do get to see the Savannah Marshall fight. It's a dangerous game, like being in your prime and mixing the two sports like you are. But she feels like she's at a level where she could do that, and fair play. Fair play. Shane said here, I'm not going to lie, if she is successful in MMA, I'll probably start watching it. Then he's also put, I heard it was fixed. What do you reckon?
But you know what? When people say stuff like, I heard it was fixed, that's such a negative thing to say, man. I mean, listen, there's no proof or whatever to suggest that fight was fixed, man. I mean, are people just disappointed that she won, so they're coming up with that narrative to try and take away from her victory? I don't know, man. But come on, give the woman credit. I wasn't in favor of her fighting in MMA. Like I said, I much prefer her to see her concentrate on her boxing, because I still think that as great as she is, there's a lot more she can fulfill as a boxer. Yeah. But I have to also admit, I do like MMA, man. It's grown on me. I mean, I've started watching it a few years back. At first, I wasn't fully convinced, but it's a combat sport, man, and I like the whole sort of theater of combat. And these guys are very skilled in what they do, man. You know what I mean? I've got a newfound respect for MMA. And for Claressa to make that transition, let's face it, she's not fully transitioned because she's still a boxer as well. I mean, she only had 7 months in which to prepare for this. She's taken on a professional who's far more experienced than her. You know what I mean? A big girl as well, big strong girl, Brittany Elkin, been around the block. And for her to get a win inside the distance like that, man, she deserves a lot of credit and respect. So for people to then turn around and say, I heard it was fixed, I think that's a little bit wrong, man, to come out with that stuff, unless you've got any real proof, which I've not seen anything like that. But give her credit, man. Give her credit. What she's doing is groundbreaking. It's unprecedented. And yeah, she deserves all the credit in the world for that win.
Conrad said here, it looked like a legitimate win to me, but I don't watch much MMA, nor do I. Shane has said here, have you spoken about Fury yet? We did. We spoke about him earlier, bro. And we're only here for a limited time today, so we can't go back on it. But we did do it at the beginning of the show. He's also put here, she has more knockouts in MMA than in boxing. Clarissa Shields. Let's move on there. We've got some fights this weekend to look forward to. Now, the biggest fight this weekend has actually been postponed, and that is Teofimo Lopez against George Kambosos. That fight there, I was really looking forward to that fight, man. I want to get your thoughts on that.
I'm looking forward to that fight so much that I changed my prediction. Because
what, you're going with Kambosos now?
Listen, I've been mega impressed with this guy, man. What I've been seeing from him, his body language, and I've seen footage of him, man, working out, and he just, maybe I was, I don't know, man. Maybe I was.
I think you wanted Kambosos to win as well.
Yeah, I think I did. I think I did as well. You're right. That probably got a lot to do with it. But I was just convinced by his strength of personality and the way he was coming over. And not only that, I saw footage of him in the gym sparring and working out. And I thought, you know what, man? This looks like all the ingredients there for an upset. And then, and by contrast, I'd seen and heard. So not so much seen, I'd heard stories that Teofimo was not looking that good in the gym. There were stories that he'd got dropped a couple of times in the gym, you know what I mean? Something that Kambosos related to in his interviews.
Is this what you wanted to hear, or did you, because I never heard it, is that what actually happened?
If you go online and you look at some recent George Kambosos interviews, he talks about it. He says, listen, man, word on the street is he's been dropped in sparring a couple of times in the lead up to this fight. And I was starting to believe that we could see a real upset here. I mean, listen, let's be honest, man, I was quite impressed with George Kambosos when he beat Lee Selby. Lee Selby, okay, he's not the fighter that he once was, but he's still a good opponent. And for a guy to come over from Australia and beat him in the way he did beat him convincingly. And that
there's a difference between Selby and Teofimo Lopez, isn't there?
There is a difference, man. But you know what? Listen, Teofimo had a great win against Lomachenko, obviously. But there's some of his other fights, man. You know what I mean? Nakatani and one or two others, he's not looked great. You know what I mean? So, listen, I was looking forward to the fight, man. Listen, clearly, Teofimo would have been a heavy favorite, but I like the look of Kambosos, man. I liked his body language. I liked the way he came over. He was impressing me with his work in the gym. And I thought, you know what? If Teofimo has not got his eyes on the ball here, man, and doesn't get him out of there within the first 2 or 3 rounds, and it goes long, this could be a very interesting fight. You know what I mean? So,
well, it's not happening.
It's a shame that it's been called off. Apparently, yeah,
it's not happening.
Well, what we've been told is that Teofimo's contracted COVID. Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, he contracted COVID, didn't he?
Yeah.
Teofimo contracted COVID. So it's not going to happen. I would imagine it will get pushed back. How that will affect both of them going forward, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But it's a real shame the fight's not going ahead, man. Because I think at the very least, this would have been a very good fight.
It's been pushed back to August. I believe August the 14th, but it's been pushed back already. So yeah, it's been rescheduled. Yeah. The whole card has actually been pushed back now, so that won't be going ahead. What we do have going ahead though is 3 what I'll say showcase fights. Now, feel free to correct me if anyone in the chat disagrees, but we have now Inoue in action. He'll be taking on Das Marinas. Then we've got Charlo, he'll be taking on Montiel, and then we've got Munguia, who'll be taking on Triple G's last opponent. I'm not going to butcher his name on here, but let's just say he didn't put up much resistance. Now, when I say showcase fights, I just mean like what I'm saying. Like, I'm not expecting any upsets here. I could be being ignorant. If I am, let me know. But I'm not expecting Daz Marinas to defeat Naoya Inoue. I'm certainly not expecting Montiel to defeat Jamal Charlo. And the guy who's fighting Munguia, he's not going to beat him. What do you think? I mean, when you have fights like these, I mean, it's great to see the best in action. But when you kind of have an idea of what's going to happen, I mean, I'm predicting all three of them to stop their opponents. You know, you never know. I mean, boxing, we can't predict it all the time. But can you see any upsets in any of these three fights, or anything close to an upset?
Not at all. In fact, the only upset would be if any of those three lasted distance with those respective guys. Very underwhelming, man, especially when you consider that the Lopez Cambosos fight got cancelled. And by the way, I don't want to go back too far, but I'm just thinking out loud that if Lopez has got COVID, how can they reasonably predict that that fight will go ahead in August? Because listen, man, a lot of people who have COVID, some people get what they call long COVID, which is that you don't fully recover in the space of a few days. You know what I mean? So it depends on how he feels as he comes out of having COVID. You know what I mean? But anyway, but yeah, to go back to those three fights you mentioned there, man, like you said quite rightly, the best thing about those fights is that we get to see those guys, the Inoues, Munguia, and Charlo Senior, in the ring, fighting again. But the opponents, man, let's be honest, very underwhelming names, aren't they? So I expect all three of those guys to come through well. Probably going to see a couple of highlight reel knockouts in those. You know what I mean? Probably be the best thing you could say about those fights. They'll either be highlight reel knockouts or one-sided beatdowns, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, out of those three, which one do you see? I don't want to put you on the spot, but which one do you see being the most remotely the most competitive? Then I don't know much about Daz Marinas, but like I don't know, what do you think? Because I'm not too excited about this weekend.
Yeah,
I'm not going to pretend on here for people to say, yeah, man, this is really, you know, it's going to be this and that. I'm just like, look, man, it's a showcase fight. You know, we get to see them in action. If you really like following this particular fighter, then it'll be good for you to watch him. But yeah, I'm not really. This could come back to bite me in the ass, but at the moment, I'm not really looking forward to it. Ash in the comment has said here, none of these fights are lit this weekend. Yeah, none of them. No. And he's put one-sided beatdowns. That's how I see it.
That's it. That's what I said earlier. It's either highlight reel knockouts or one-sided beatdowns. I think of the three, the one that I would probably look forward to the most would probably be the Charlo. And I say that only because I'm more familiar with watching Charlo than I am with the other two. And we know that Charlo is pressing to fight Canelo. So I guess if he gets a highlight reel knockout, people will say, yeah, I mean, with his punching power, it would be great to see him in with Canelo. So that would be the narrative of that fight. But I'm not expecting him to get tested at all, really, because there's nothing in this guy's record that suggests that he'll be hanging around too long. I guess the danger is if Charlo doesn't look that impressive, then it won't do his chances of getting the Canelo fight much good, really, will it? Yeah. In terms of marketability.
Yeah, and listen, I hate to be like negative and put it down on it, but I just have to keep it 100, man. I'm not too enthralled by these cards. But hey, I mean, it's boxing. I'm gonna watch it. I'm not gonna pretend that I ain't. One fight I'm gonna ask you if you're gonna watch is also taking place this weekend. Is the exhibition fight. I don't know if it's still going ahead, but I haven't heard much about it this week. But Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. and Hector Camacho Jr. were actually scheduled to fight this weekend. I don't know. I believe that's still going ahead. But, yeah, I mean, Julio Cesar Chavez, he fought Hector Camacho Sr., didn't he? And he beat him in the 90s, didn't he? So I guess just that's how they're trying to spin this narrative here for this exhibition fight. It's a 6-rounder. But, yeah, Camacho Jr. is like 42. Julio Cesar Chavez is in his late 50s. This shouldn't be happening, but there are loads of exhibition fights that shouldn't be happening. So I don't really know what to say about it anymore.
Zero interest. Again, it's actually quite sad to see a guy that I looked up to as a legend of the sport engaging in this type of thing. It does nothing for me. I don't care who wins, who loses, who gets knocked out. It's just sad all the way around, man. And the less said about it, the better. It doesn't belong in the conversation, really. These guys, as I said before, if they want to stay in boxing, let him become a coach, let him become a mentor to his son or whatever. This coming back now, why is he doing it? Does he need the money? Is it the limelight he's seeking? I don't know. I mean, I know he's a natural fighting man. But me, I don't know, man. I just can't get excited about none of these exhibitions. None of them. There's not one that's happened. The Roy Jones Tyson, I thought was arse. You know what I mean? I'm just not. It just doesn't do it for me at all, man. Seriously, just does not do it for me at all.
What about this here? What Asher said. Breaking news. Oscar De La Hoya fighting a UFC fighter on September 18th in an exhibition. And I think he's right, because I think that flashed up on my phone as well. This will clash with Canelo, who will be fighting on Mexican Independence Day. It's a trend now. It's not going away.
It's not going away, but it doesn't mean to say I have to engage in it. I just think it's ridiculous, really. Oscar should not be fighting. I know he's had problems outside the ring, alleged drink and alcohol and drugs issues, allegedly. The man needs to get his mind right, man. I'm not sure doing this type of stuff is going to make him any better in the long run. You know what I mean? Just give it up, man. You've had a career. Listen, Julia Cesar Chavez and Oscar De La Hoya were great fighters, man. They've got nothing to prove, man. You know what I mean? Just give it up, bro. You know what I mean? You're not going to enhance your reputation by doing this. If anything, you're going to take away from your reputations by doing this. It's just a sad sideshow. You know what I mean? Just something that they should not be engaging in my opinion. But if people are going to pay to see it, then they're going to pay to see it. But not for me, man. Not for me at all.
Let's move on swiftly from that. We haven't got much long left, so I wanted to get your thoughts on two announcements that took place this week. One of them was the fight camp bill that got released by Eddie Hearn this week. And the second was a fight between Joe Joyce and Carlos Takam, which will be taking place on the same day as Wilder Fury 3. Now, let's look at this fight camp card. If I just share my screen quickly. Bear with. Now, can you see that? Let me know what you think. Week 1, the headliner, Conor Benn versus Adrian Granados. You've got week 2, headlining Kid Galahad against Jazza Dickens. Then week 3, you've got Buatsi against Bolotniks. And then the undercard for some of these, you've got Campbell Hatton. You've got McCarthy versus William Smith. It's not a bad fight. Shannon Courtney in action. Avni Yildirim's on that week 1 show. Fabio Wardley on week 2. Babic is fighting Bennett on week 2. Then you've got Savannah Marshall on week 3. Felix Cash on week 3. Now, Eddie Hearn, obviously he's a promoter. He's going to, he's going to say what he's going to say. But he's put here game change. Was this a game changer for you? Is this a game changer? These fight camp shows? Because to me, it wasn't no game changer. It's not no game changer to me. But what do you think?
I would agree with you. There's nothing game changing about those fights. But then listen, to be fair to Eddie Hearn,
he's a promoter.
It's a new venture, and you can't have like marquee fights on every single bill, can you? Just not going to work that way. It's impossible. But Ben versus Granados is a decent test for Conor Benn.
Here is a question for you. Looking at these shows, if you could have a free ticket to go to any one of these shows, which one would you go to?
I'd go for the one in the middle there, Galahad versus Dickens. I think that's going to be a very competitive fight.
Yep. Fabio Wardley on the undercard, Babic versus Bennett on the undercard, Eddie Scottney, Courtney Bridges. So, I mean...
To me, most people, when they're looking at fights, and this is no
Ebony
disrespect.
Bridges, not Ebony Bridges, sorry, not Courtney Bridges.
Yeah, when you're looking at fights, you're obviously the main event is what's gonna grab your attention. So I'm looking at those fights, and the one in the middle there, Galahad versus Dickens, will be a very competitive fight. They fought before. Kid Galahad won, but that was a long time ago. There's a lot on the line, world titles for that fight. The Ben versus Granados, I think the undercard's a little stronger than the other two. But in answer to your question, if I was going to pick one out of those three, it would probably be the Galahad Dickens, which I think is a very competitive and a very potentially very good fight.
Yeah. I mean, it's something different, isn't it?
I like watching Buatsi. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch. So the answer to your question is that I'll be watching all three of them. I'm a boxing nerd, I watch all three, but I think the one that stands out the most would be the Galahad Dickens fight.
Yeah, have to agree. IBF titles on the line as well in that one. Yeah. It's like Harvey says here, it's not incredible, but it's not awful either. Do you know what I mean? There'd be good Saturday fight nights. That's
yeah.
A good Saturday, yeah. So I'm
it's
not
far from awful.
Yeah,
but it's definitely not incredible.
Yeah.
And listen, with boxing, it's the same like any sport. You can't get marquee matchups every single week. That's unrealistic to expect that. But you know, I'm sure the cards will grow and the shows will grow, and will, you know what I mean, as time goes on, you will see better fighters and more competitive shows.
Conrad said here, you'll change your opinion when you lot in the UK have to pay the full DAZN price soon. We'll see.
Well, I mean, listen, Conrad does make a very good point there. At the moment, the subscription fee is very, very reasonable. I do expect it to go up, but it's like anything, isn't it? It's like supply and demand. If the demand is there, then fair enough. But the minute the quality drops, then, you know, people like myself will have a decision to make, whether to unsubscribe or not, you know what I mean? So they'll have to be careful with that one. They don't want to go push too quick too soon, because especially the casuals, who, let's face it, they'll be hoping to attract. You see, they won't be just going after hardcore boxing fans like me and you. They'll be looking, if this is going to be a successful venture, they have to get enough boxing casuals to come on board. And if you overprice those people, then it's not going to work. So they do need to be cognizant of that, to be honest.
Let's see how it all pans out, man. Lastly, before we go, it was announced this week that Joe Joyce will be fighting Carlos Takam on July the 24th. Joe Joyce's first fight back since defeating Daniel Dubois in November last year. What do you think about that? I mean, you guys in the chat, Laurie, what do you think of that fight there with Carlos Takam?
Again, I'm underwhelmed. I'm underwhelmed. I've got to say it, man. Listen, it's good to see Joe Joyce back in the ring doing his thing. He deserves to be back in the ring. He deserves to be put out there for the people to watch him, especially after that exhilarating win against Daniel Dubois, which, let's face it, a lot of people had him as the underdog in that fight. And he won well. Fair play to him. I'm glad to see him back in the ring. That being said, man, I'm not particularly excited about this fight. Carlos Takam is, let's face it, a fighter that pretty much every time he's been stepped up, he's been beaten and been beaten well. I mean, even Derek Chisora knocked him out. No disrespect, but, you know, Derek chinned him. So am I excited about the fight? No, but I am happy to see Joe Joyce back in the ring. I fully expect him to get a win. I fully expect him to dominate Takam and to win inside the distance. And
Conrad said here,
a world title shot soon. So listen, I get it. Are they going to put him in with a killer? No, but I would have liked to have seen something a little bit more competitive, a bit more tantalizing than this, man. I have to say.
Conrad said here, the Yoka fight would have been better. It would have been. It would have been.
I wouldn't expect them to put him in with Yoka just yet, to be honest, because he's near a world title shot, isn't he?
Well, that's the thing. Well, who'd you put Joyce in with then that would have satisfied you? Because you don't want to put him in with Tupac. You don't want to put him in with Takam.
Someone like a Michael Hunter would have sufficed. You know, I'm sure if they searched around, they could have found someone a bit more plausible. Because Carlos Takam, he's got loser written all over it, hasn't it? Let's be honest. Carlos Takam at this stage of his career is not going to be Joe Joyce. No way. You know what I mean? I expect it to be a fairly easy night for Joe Joyce. And it's not like Carlos Takam as a big name. You know what I mean? So, nah.
One thing I will say is that it's, to me, I'm just looking at it like, you know, it's just a feeder fight for Wilder Fury 3. Because that whole night is going to have heavyweight action. You know, Joe Joyce against Carlos Takam over here. Then when it goes to Wilder Fury 3 in the US, the whole undercard is full of heavyweight fights. So, yeah, I'm just looking at this as just another undercard fight. Even though it's not on the same show, but because it's on the same night, I'm just looking at it like, okay, this is a heavyweight fight here, Joe Joyce. Then we've got, you know, the undercard for Wilder Fury 3. And then you have Wilder Fury 3. So, yeah, if it was more standalone, then, yeah, I'd get it. But because it's, like, probably going to be part of the same show on BT, then, you know, it is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, it'd be good to see Joe Joyce back in the ring. It's kind of difficult to select an opponent for him, you know what I mean? Because, like I said, he's not going to fight like Usyk or Hrgovic or Yoka or any one of those guys. And when you go much deeper than that, when you scratch below that level, who's going to really give him a competitive fight? So I guess Takam was one of the names out there that people know on account that he's been to these shores a few times now, albeit he's been beaten comprehensively all 3 times. But, you know, all things being equal, I guess it's an okay opponent, but it's not something that's going to excite anybody. I guess the only exciting thing about that is that we're going to get to see Joe Joyce back in the ring again.
Yeah, have to agree. Have to agree. But listen, man, we're going to wrap it up for today, man. Not the hour and 20-hour-and-a-half show as we've become accustomed to over the last few weeks. But Laurie's over there in AFTV, another AFTV studio, actually. We survived it. The Wi-Fi ain't been great, but it's been all right. What do you got to say to close out, man?
No, just thanks for having me back on again, man. As I say all the time, thanks for me to coming on and to be able to indulge my passion in this way. I love talking about boxing. I love being on the show. You're a great host, and I'm not being biased in saying that. So, yeah, man, I enjoyed every minute of it. I hope people out there watching also enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe, man. Share the great work. You know what I mean? Let's get these numbers up, man. Let's get this show out there. Get the numbers that a show like this deserves, in my opinion. In my unbiased opinion.
Big up everybody, man. Francisco, Harvey, here every week, you guys, man. Conrad, big up you guys, man. Much appreciated every single time. Guys, we'll be back next week, as we always are. And enjoy your weekend. Look forward to the fights, and we'll catch up then.